Welcome to Splash of Socialism. We here at S.o.S are not socialists in the modern sense. We are not anti-commerce. We are not anti-business. We are anti-exploitation. We also demand that society's bare minimum needs be met, no matter what. We are also passionate about language. We have watched helplessly as the media has abused language to lie and fearmonger. We are here to share our truth. We are here to out hypocrisy where we find it. To do that, we also need to reclaim the language being used to divide us. We don't have all the answers. We are probably going to get details wrong. This is where you come in. If we get something wrong, call us out. And if we made a stupid mistake,
Like referring to London as a country. Oops.
yeah, but by all means, make fun of us. We are having a conversation. We are not teaching a history lesson. These conversations are unscripted and unedited. We have nothing to hide.
Welcome to S.o.S. We are going to start each episode by reviewing a few related policy topics from my website, proudprogressivepatriot.com. And then we are going to have an unscripted conversation about those topics. We will end each episode by answering what should be an obvious question, but somehow still seems to be in debate. Today, from my website on the Issues tab, I have 3 questions I want to talk about. First one is, should people be required to register to vote? I say no. I think eligible people should be automatically registered to vote when they turn 16. They can opt out if they choose. The second question is, should early voting be expanded? And I say not exactly. I think we should switch to a full vote by mail system, such as what Oregon does. Arizona does a lot of this. Lots of states do. It works really well. This should include postage paid return envelopes with every ballot, and we should also place ballot drop boxes at convenient locations. We should also offer in-person voting locations where voters can go with their questions during election week, not just election day. And the third question is, should convicted criminals have to fight to regain their right to vote? And I say no. I don't think that right should ever be taken in the first place. Unless a person is sentenced to life in prison, their voting rights should remain. People do not only vote for their own interests, they vote for their family's interests, their neighbors' interests, and their community's interests. Inmates are counted in the census and therefore should not lose their right to vote. That last question can be found in the criminal legal section of my website, but it relates to our topics today. So JT, why don't we start with
Well,
whether or not somebody should be required to register to vote?
I say yes. There's got to be some accounting. Uh, if and all you have to do is show up at the polls. Hello, welcome back to Chicago. Um, no, there's got to be some accountability in that respect. They need to register. And how else would they get their vote by mail that you proposed?
It's like your social security card, right? You get one just because you could. Um, I'm not even necessarily saying that 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote, but I think at 16, when people are still in school and still getting their driver's licenses, that's when they should be registered to vote. Like, okay, you're 16, you're a citizen, you're now on the voter rolls, and then you can opt out.
Well, I don't believe in essence giving 16-year-olds right to vote because I don't see how you'd give them registration without allowing them to vote. That just seems
You can register at 17 now as long as you're 18 in the next election.
no, that makes sense. I'm good with that.
So that's the same thing. I'm just saying at 16 you're getting your driver's license and you're already all dealing with all of that stuff. You just knock it out at the same time.
Just promise me the 16-year-olds aren't going to vote.
Right? They wouldn't be able to. Like you're still like they wouldn't get mailed a ballot until they're 18, right? It's just automatic.
Okay. That I was going to mention voter programs, and
What's that?
I think that's where when you get your driver's license, you're automatically enrolled unless you opt out. Most states have that. Arizona has that.
And that makes sense to me.
I think Arizona has that.
Um, but yeah, I don't think we should have to be putting extra barriers in place. It's like, the voter ID law. I don't even want to. Oh, you need an ID to do this. You need an ID to buy beer. Well, buying a beer is not in the Constitution. Voting is, right?
Yeah, I like that.
You know, you still have to prove who you are. You can't just go in and say, I can't go in and be like, I'm JT, I'm gonna vote, right? You still have to have, student IDs should work. Why don't student IDs work? What, to get an ID, you need a utility bill. So why can't you use that? Like, this has my name, this other thing, this is who I am, but I shouldn't have to spend the time and money to, but that's not even, voter ID is a whole other episode, I think. Um, I'm just talking about adding hurdles to getting people to the ballot, and by telling people you have to register to vote, like you're already creating hurdle one.
And
Instead of
have
just you are registered to vote when you
and
show up.
a lot of ID requirements in various states. I make it ridiculous to try to vote.
Yeah, and Texas right now, Georgia right now, they're making it worse and worse. That's back to what we are talking about on the last episode about that even though, each state runs their own elections, we need to have some kind of federal baseline, some kind of federal minimums of what's allowed. Um, um, these are areas where I think those all apply. Um, vote by mail and felon voting. Let's move on to vote by mail and other early voting. Um, Not every state does early voting the same. Some states do it, for a couple weeks before you can come in and vote. Some
Well,
states it's just that
un-
day.
until recently, I'd never heard of Sunday voting. I'd never heard of early voting. Uh, I voted in Illinois, Colorado, Oregon, Arizona. I'd never heard of early voting. Um, I'd never heard of let's get the congregation from church to
The
register on
souls to the
Sunday.
polls. I think that's a
Yeah,
great idea.
I think so too, but I was totally unaware that other than absentee ballots, you couldn't vote early
And it makes
as a
sense.
rule,
Well,
as
yeah. Well, and you have people propose, oh, well, let's make voting a national holiday. Well, it's great in theory, except for what's still open on national holidays. All the grocery stores, all the fast food stores,
all the
all
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 the
essential
necessary
employees
workers. Thank you, essential.
who are not going to get that day off, and
And
so
they're the ones who need it off.
yeah, exactly. So
Talk
it
about
we need to have voting week, you know, not voting day, and it can all wrap up on that November or whatever, but we need to have polling places that are open, you
yeah.
know,
Well,
24 hours a day for the
if
week
you're
before the
if
election.
you're determined not to do it 100%, um, then yeah, a week, 5 days
Well,
anyway.
even if you consider yourself 100% vote by mail, you're not going to be 100% vote by mail because there are people that don't have access to mail. They don't. Homeless people don't have, mailboxes. There's going to be people who still want to vote in person and still are going to have questions. And I feel like we need to, do. Everybody's eligible to vote by mail, but still the polling place is open for a week. Not just Monday through Friday 9 to 5. Um, but for the week before to answer questions and
Let's call it a voting center,
yeah, exactly.
not a polling place per se.
Yeah, because it's not just to go cast your ballot. It's to go get questions asked and um, things like that. So, right now, where people's ballots get, you know, discarded for using, the wrong pen, whatever. Like that's the kind of technical questions that can be answered. And then they were talking. It was Texas talking about like doing one ballot drop box per county. And it's like that's fine when
That's
you have
limited.
700 people in your county, but when you're in Dallas and you got the entire city of Dallas trying to use one Dropbox. That's insane. Like, it needs to be, convenient Dropboxes all around your voting district, um, and or postage return. Like, we need to be making easy as possible to vote.
Well, I don't know if you were aware, but I was in Oregon when vote by mail went in.
Mm-mm.
And obviously, the sky was falling, and it has been the most successful, incorrupt, I can't say totally uncorruptible, but just the safest, best way to go. And
I love it.
you'll never get me off of that. And if we go that way, then we don't need all the extra early voting, but we still keep, yes, we do still keep some polls.
Yeah, so I mean, I voted in Utah, um, and I stood in line, went to my polling place, stood in line, filled out my ballot, but I didn't have 5 pages of notes in front of me of what the whole ballot was, so I voted a lot of, party ticket down the line. Um, and then when I moved to Oregon and I got to vote by mail, I got to sit at my kitchen table with my voter's pamphlet and and Google all the politicians on the ballot, all the referendums on the ballot, and take my time because there wasn't 5 people standing in line behind me waiting for the booth, and I got to make informed voting decisions.
Well, I'm so glad you used that phrase because that is absolutely one of my pillars of supporting vote by mail is the ability to sit with your family or whomever, 3, 4 people, 5 people, all with their ballots, all with the voter's pamphlet, and each question gets read aloud and people discuss it amongst themselves, becoming informed voters. And that's why most states don't like it because they want to keep the voters dumb.
Believe that.
Healthy discussion among peers, among family members. I I can't think of a time that any of my family groups all voted for the same president. So
No,
it's
not more than
so
like
it's
immediate family. Yeah.
yeah, so it's not, if you do it in that spirit, it's not like, okay, dad's gonna decide what everybody's gonna vote. Yeah.
There was, I remember reading this article. I think it was the 2016 election, and this woman was so anti-Hillary, um, which I am too. That's not the point. Um, but her whole thought was is that everybody should vote in the House the way the man in the House votes. And my man says I should vote for Donald Trump, so that's what I'm going to vote for. And it's, oh, such a gross. Like mine said,
Yeah,
no, everybody should vote for who they want to vote for. That's the whole point.
that's why
Um,
you got the vote.
and it's one of the reasons to get rid of the electoral college, but that's our next episode. So
That's
we'll get
true.
into that one.
And I'm waffling on my support for it, so we'll see how that goes.
Um, um,
I,
so we vote by mail registration. So the last thing I want to talk about is convicted criminals having to regain their right to vote.
and
Um,
I've got some stats on that. Should I wait a minute or?
yeah, I want to start with a few quotes from um, what's his name? Uh, Marco Rubio. Um, there's 2 quotes with him saying, um, you know, hell yes, convicted felons should absolutely get their gun rights back. Like they served their time, they should get their gun rights back. And then in a totally other conversation was, hell no, convicted criminals shouldn't have their right to vote. They lost their right to vote when they got convicted. And I'm not sure if it's state by state, but it's if you're convicted of a felony, like you lose your right to vote. Period. Can't get it back. Um,
Well, and I've got some numbers for that.
Go for it.
Okay, there are actually um, two states and a district, Maine, Vermont, and DC, that all you have to do is, or that allow you to vote in prison. 21 states restore voting after prison.
Okay.
18 states restore voting after prison with some combination of parole and or probation. And 9 states, you will probably lose your vote permanently.
I'm gonna guess Florida is one of those 9.
What's that?
I'm gonna guess Florida is one of those 9
Actually, I
because,
didn't
well,
take those notes, but
so
could
what
be.
happened in Florida is they actually passed a ballot
Oh,
referendum
that's right. I remember that.
to give felons the right to vote back. Like the
Right.
politicians are like, hell no, felons shouldn't vote, and the people are like, yeah, they should, and voted a ballot referendum and it passed. And so what happened was the politicians were like, oh, okay, well, fine, but only once you paid off all of your court costs.
Yes.
And it's like,
And
no, now
that's
you like you've
now you
now
put them
that's
in
a poll
debtor's
tax.
prison.
Yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
poll tax. Like
Yes.
you cannot make somebody pay something to have to vote. Like that's not how that works. And I think that you said 3 states or 2 states in a district, they vote in prison. I think that's exactly what we should be doing. Like they're all
I
there.
agree.
What else are they doing anyway? Give them some ballots, right? Like it's
They
not just
actually have
about.
time to study the issues.
And it's not, like I said, oh well, they're in prison. What do they care? What do they care who's president? It's not about them. They have families, they have kids, they have spouses. Like they are voting for their, what they see as best for their community, not just necessarily for them. And I'm with you. If you're life in prison, then maybe that's a different issue. But if you're serving 2 years for something, you shouldn't lose your right to vote because of it.
Well, and I would think most people in prison have somebody on the outside that could be affected by their vote.
Right. And if they're counted in the census. So it's like if we're counting you for our congressional representation, then we should definitely be getting to count your vote. Like we have so many people, more people didn't vote than voted for either Trump or Hillary in 2016. So it was like, oh, my vote doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter. Like all those people who didn't vote voted, it would have made a huge difference.
Scary to think which way.
Yeah, I mean, it probably still would have been close, but the point is like too many people think their vote doesn't matter, and it's enough that it matters.
I absolutely agree.
All right.
And yeah, I think that we should all follow that rule. So,
Yeah, just I have a hoodie that says "Make democracy easier," and I just
oh, I
it
love
makes sense to me. We should not be making voting harder than it is. Like it's
that's
something that
that's stupid. Tell me some other stupid stuff.
yeah. That's a whole job here, I think.
That
Okay, all right. Well, so
was
to
your segue.
wrap
That was your segue.
Yeah, so to wrap up, things I shouldn't have to say, but apparently do.
I
Question is,
guess it.
should employers be required to pay men and women equal pay for equal work? Obviously. Like, I don't even need to get into why. It's just, yeah, you do.
You know, these should be followed up by a rim shot. But
Yeah, seriously. No,
but
like, why are we
so
still having this discussion?
but
Like, the job pays what the job pays, regardless of who does it.
we're probably closer to that now than ever before. But
Yeah, still something like 30 cents to off.
well, and I'm still appalled that there are still several that the Equal Rights Amendment has never passed.
Yeah, it's
It
pretty.
only needs like 2 states more or something like that. But anyway,
I thought the
another.
last state finally did it, but they decided it had been too long and it had to start over or something. I don't
I
know,
don't know.
whatever. Yeah, it's a mess. All right, well, next episode we will be talking about Confederate monuments and the Electoral College.
From the fifth district and beyond.